I will be, I interned at JP Morgan, and I'm going to be an incoming analyst in their office in Ohio in July.
I can go next. So my name is Maryalina Shipley, and what's funny is that I am a girl who cannot code. I've taken several coding classes, and I've had a long-standing 17-year career surrounding myself with very smart people who can code and working to manage them. I've lived in Charlotte now for a couple of years, and I'm at Slalom and love what I do.
Hi, I'm Quin. I'm also a UNC Charlotte alumni. I graduated in fall of 2020, and I currently work as a junior Android engineer at Synchrony. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And I forgot to introduce myself as well. But if you guys don't know already, those who are watching this or are here with us virtually, my name is Elise. I'm current president of Girls Who Code, and I will actually be returning as president in the fall as well. So I look forward to continuing to grow this beautiful organization and do great events like this too as well. So yeah, I'm really excited to basically ask our lovely panelists some questions we have, and then after that, we'll open the floor for the audience to answer. We'll ask questions as well. So that being said, I will get started with the first question, and definitely let me know if you need me to repeat any. But yeah, so the first question is how do you get prepared for an internship? This can be mentally, emotionally, and or technically.
I can get us started. So for me, preparing for an internship is more of a mental thing because I tend to overwork myself before the start date. But I guess one main thing I learned is to always set some expectations for yourself, whether that might be to learn a new coding language or work on your communication skills. But kind of setting expectations allows me to mentally realize that I'm working towards something, and it's okay if it's a slow process, but just it's a learning experience. You got to take it in. But I think from a technical perspective, I like to kind of ask around before the start date, maybe reach out to my recruiter, my manager, and kind of get an understanding of what skills are necessary. If I need to learn Python, maybe that's something I can brush up on before the internship starts, or maybe they can give me resources to kind of learn it along the way. But definitely go into an internship with an open mind, a good mindset, because you don't want to overload yourself and overwhelm yourself throughout the experience.
Okay, so I'll keep us going. I would say that mentally, I would say daily affirmations, remembering what you bring to the table. If you can't remember what that is, sometimes ask a family or a friend, a family member or a friend to write down some things about yourself. They're the ones that know you, they care about you, and can remind you of those things. Go into it very confident. In terms of technically, I would say the same thing. Research the company, use LinkedIn. It's definitely a good resource. I would look at what these people have accomplished in their lives and see where you align with them and where you can connect.
I'd say that mentally for me, interviews are still really difficult, to be honest. They're really nerve-wracking. So I completely empathize with anyone going through that. I would say that mentally, just remember to stay calm. Like, I think a lot of times we get in our heads and we start thinking about scenarios that may never happen, or we think too much about what could be asked or, you know, how we'll be reacting to certain questions, and it makes interviewing really difficult. I would say technically, one thing that I always do is, like Maryalina said, research. So look at LinkedIn, see what your prospective interviewer is doing. For instance, I've had an interviewer who had a podcast. So that was something I brought up during the interview to let them know that, hey, I did research and I kind of know what you're into. So we can talk about that. And another thing is using Glassdoor, which sometimes can be a help and sometimes not, but at times there are certain questions that people leave that were asked during their interviews as an intern that might be helpful. And also just making a list of questions that could potentially be asked and preparing situations for each question.
Those were all great answers to that question. And I definitely want to like back that up as well. Like all of them, especially like Maryalina, like when it came to affirmations, I do that all the time, especially like if it has to do with internship or just like when I'm in a computer science course, it's like predominantly male. I'm just like, I need to remember like what I bring to the table. Like I'm in this field for a reason. So I definitely understand where you come from with that. Like it's so important to remind ourselves like the importance we bring to a table, especially being women in this field. Like we bring so much value. And I feel like daily affirmations, it can be like, oh yeah, like I can remind myself that. But like when we do it all the time, it becomes like, oh yeah, like that's a good reminder for myself. But yeah, those are really great responses to that question. So the next question we have is, what was your first time experience with a technical internship like, or an internship in general?
My first experience with a technical internship was really nerve-wracking because it was right after my freshman year and I was still not very confident in my coding or technical abilities, but it was a great experience. I just made sure that my supervisor was kind of aware of what I was, skilled in and what I wasn't skilled in. And, again, the point of an internship is that you learn. So if there is something you want to learn, I made sure to communicate that. So I could be put on assignments or projects where I could kind of learn and develop skills in that specific concept. But overall, I think internships just are a really big learning experience. You need to be really communicative about what you do want to do and what you don't want to do, what you are comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, because I think personally, I've learned a lot more technical concepts from my internships than I have in a classroom setting. But yeah, first time was not the best, but it was definitely somewhere that I can say I learned a lot and grew more confident in.
And so for my internship experience, I do not have technical internship experience, but I have managed a group of technical people before, developers and engineers and interns. You can learn a lot of things. There's some things that we can't. So bringing yourself to the table, like going back to what we were talking about, knowing your worth, but all these classes that you're taking, they're giving you the fundamentals, right? They're giving you those concepts. When you walk into that real world, you're going to need to adjust to whatever that group is that you're working in. And I loved what you were saying, Akshithaa, that the purpose of an internship is to learn. So ask those questions, reach out. For people that are nervous when they're interviewing with me, it always tells me that they care about what they're doing, right? If you weren't nervous, I would be a little concerned that like you're not taking it as seriously. So that part's okay too. Be yourself, ask those questions. My experiences in internships, I've had to rely on my people skills because I don't have that technical piece. So I would reach out to those who are very good at explaining to me, this is what this select statement is trying to tell you, right? And when you see this, this is what it's doing. Because at my position, that's what I need to know is just the basics. And I leave that big stuff to really, it's gonna be the interns. So again, my experiences were great, not very technical, but build on those connections. That'll enable you to work well, both technically and with the business.
I would say that my internship experience is really positive. I managed to land myself in a field I never thought I would be in, which was QA, but I was open to getting into it because I wanted that experience of being on a team. I wanted to be in an agile environment, and I was open to learning as much as possible in a short period of time. So I really enjoyed the people that I got to meet, and I networked a lot during my internship, which I think is incredibly important. A lot of the people that I interned with, I still speak to this day, and I still have a pulse on kind of the job openings that are there in case I ever wanted to return to the company. I think that is always a positive thing. So make sure you network, and also make sure that you're not limiting yourself to one specific career field, because I thought for sure, hey, I'm going to be in UX, but I ended up in QA, and it was still a positive experience that I could speak of when I interviewed for the job I have now.
Those are great answers. And I definitely want to like follow up with what you said, Quin, when it comes to like keeping like an open mind to like positions you could apply for. Because when it came for me applying to internships, I read the description and like, I'm just like, I don't know, like if this would fall in like the area that I want to work in, but like I still applied anyway, because like experience is experience at the end of the day. So like, whether it's like, I don't know, since I'm a data scientist, like in that area, like doing something software engineering, I'm learning in my classes now that like there's a lot of like software engineering components that can go with data science. I'm like, oh, okay. So just seeing that connection and seeing that, keeping it open-minded when it comes to job positions. I feel like that's definitely very important. So I'm glad you brought up that point. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your answers to that question. The next question I have is, what is one key must-know advice you would give to first-time interns?
I think one key piece of advice would be to always network, whether that's with other interns in your cohort or people on your team that you're assigned, or even just other people in the company that you've never talked to, but they have a position that you're interested in and would like to do maybe one day. I think getting an internship is the most ideal place to just network, set up coffee chats, set up meetings, go get lunch with them, because those conversations and connections will be so handy in your future. Kind of like Quin said for the last question, even today, I still have like old mentors and old interns reach out to me when there's like a job opening that they think I'd be great for. And when I see a job opening that I feel like someone else I knew would be a great fit for, I would definitely send it to them. But networking is a great way to also improve your communication skills in the professional world, but it's going to be very handy in your future endeavors.
Okay, one thing, it's hard to nail it down to just one thing for someone like me that talks a lot. But I would say overall, I truly believe that life is not about what happens to you, it's about how we handle it. So that would be the one piece that I would say go away with. I think that they're all going to be important, what each one of us says, but bring yourself back to that. Yeah.
My advice would be try not to say no to too many things. I remember in my internship, I was placed into a project group that I was not very interested in, but ended up having a really great time and learned a lot about cognitive science, which I never really approached in school. And I had another opportunity to join another project group, and it felt so overwhelming at the time. But I'm happy I did not say no to that, because I ended up using that experience to work my way into the job I have now. I can say, oh yeah, I did do this, this, and this in my internship experience, and now I'm confident that I can use those skills to perform well in this job.
Awesome. Those are great. I love that. The next question I have were, what were the day-to-day responsibilities like in one of your internships you have done?
I'll probably talk a little bit more about my most recent internship, because that was the first one kind of after COVID was a thing. Most of my internships were during COVID, so they were all remote, but the one I had last summer was the first one that was in person, and I was so nervous to actually have to like face-to-face see people and do those responsibilities. But a day-to-day kind of just looked like taking a shuttle to the work building every day. And then we had daily morning check-in calls, which I found out are very common things in the tech world, just everyone in the team joining in on those 8 a.m., 9 a.m. calls to talk about what they did the day before, what their plans are for the day of, kind of keeping each other updated. And then throughout the day, responsibilities were kind of just working on whatever project you were assigned. Maybe it was a group project, individual project, coding project. We had a lot of intern trainings to attend. The company had a lot of workshops that there were mandatory for us to learn new skills. So kind of just attending that. But I try to make it my responsibility to at least set up 1 or 2 coffee chats per day with an intern or my manager or a team member, just to kind of learn more about them. Maybe they can give me a tour of the building. Overall, just a way to network and see how they got to where they are today.
Oh, yep. You took a lot of what I could say too. One of my first internships that I remember, mine were many, many years ago. They do typically start with coffee and our stand-up. So what did we all do yesterday? What are we planning to do today? And what are we going to do tomorrow? Do we have any roadblocks with things? Right now I'm a product manager, so my job is to clear those roadblocks. As an intern, I was organizing quite a bit. And back in my day, there was actually a lot of paper printed off of the printer. And it wasn't like archaic, but it was for like the time and age. I couldn't believe I went to school and they were paying me to do this. They handed me scissors and I had to cut pieces of paper that had multiple stories on them and then pass it out to the right people, because everything was divided by company, by name. So I remember thinking, like, every job is important. I know this is important, but there's got to be a better way. By the time I left, we had improved the process and it was great. But it is a lot of scheduled meetings, at least for internship for me. It was quite structured, and a lot of training. That was a good point as well. We did have to take certain courses, and go back to that networking. As much time as you can spend doing that, I would say do that.
My experience is kind of the same. Every morning we had stand up, and then after that, a lot of our team was offshore. So we would spend time just going over any pain points that they had during the day and making sure that it's something that myself and the other intern that was on the team could fix within a specific time frame. And at least once a week, I would make sure that I reach out to someone across team or just within the company to speak to them, to learn more about the company, learn about the structure and everything. And that was really important for me. One of the most valuable experiences I had was reaching out to the UX manager because I wanted to be in UX. And we spoke a lot about some of the expectations that would be expected for a role in UX, and it was really valuable to me. So other than that, I think a lot of it at the end of the day, whenever I finished my work, I would work on the project work that I had for just the entire internship experience.
Those were great. I do want to highlight Maryalina. She was basically commenting on your comment, Quin, about time zones. Like when it comes to time zones, like especially like sorry, I was trying to catch my breath there. Especially like in hackathons, this is very random. That was actually a big challenge we kept running into because it's basically doing hackathons that are in other like countries, but I think the one I did was in Canada. And the biggest thing that kept happening was for one person, it's like 8 a.m., but for me, it's like 3 p.m. So it's like, when do we meet? So time zones is definitely like a key thing to always keep in mind when it comes to meetings. So I definitely get that for sure. But thank you for bringing that up. The next question I have are, how are tasks usually assigned to interns?
For me, I had a weekly check-in with my manager, and that's when he would kind of assign me all the tasks for the week that he wanted completed, what he expected out of me. But I also noticed when I worked with different teams, they all use different platforms to kind of assign work. So it might be Jira, might be Rike, but I just realized it just varies from department to company, just whatever they feel comfortable with. They use just different platforms. Sometimes they'll just straight up send you an email saying, you need to do this, this, and this, but just kind of differs.
I would say the same thing. Yeah. In one internship, it was extremely structured for me. I came in and I knew the things that I was required to do, like cutting out my pieces of paper and passing them out. And then my boss would leave me like a bullet pointed list of other things to get done. But then I was also an intern where the boss would just bring me something and say, I don't care how it gets done, just fix it. Just make sure you get it done. So that was, I think, more fun for me. It was really interesting to try and network and figure out what tools I needed to use to fix it. But it can come in many different fashions.
I would say my experience was pretty similar as well. A lot of my work was delegated by my manager during our one-on-ones every week. And a lot of time, like there's always something to do with QA. There's always work to be done. And I was fortunate enough to have my internship during a period where a new product was being launched. So there was a lot of work to be done. And if anything ever slowed down, I would always reach out to someone to ask how I could be of help to them, just so I can make sure that I'm not sitting around and, dilly-dallying. That's really important. Just reaching out to your coworkers, making sure that they don't need help. Sometimes they're super busy as well, and you can kind of take the load off of them.
That's a really good point, if I could add too, because at the end of my day, when I was an intern, one of the things I did like half hour before I knew I wanted to leave was ask if anybody needed anything from me. And every once, like people got used to me asking the question, and I would get new projects or new questions, and didn't need to be, some of it was like not that day, but it was something for the next day. So putting that out there and getting them used to it, and daily affirmations, good habits, be great.
Yeah, that is really great. And like, that's funny that you guys bring that up, because I remember like in my software engineering class, that was actually a tip a teaching assistant gave my group, is like, like they didn't require it, but they're like, it would be good. Like if you just like, when you're done with everything, like, and this material really good, like it's good to just like, if you have extra time, like ask like, hey, do you guys like need help with anything? So like I try practicing that a lot, especially like in data science with people that are new to it. They're like, how the heck do you use Jupyter Notebook, or how do you use GitHub to push changes to the terminal and all that? And I'm like, okay, I gotcha. I know how to use that. But yeah, I love helping people. So I definitely love asking that question before I leave, because I always want something new to do. So I feel like that's the workaholic in me, but it's fun to me. But yeah. The next question I do have is, have you ever had any challenges occur at your internship? If so, what was it and how did you overcome it?
So in one of my internships, I had a manager that I had a really hard time adjusting to, because they would just kind of assign me these projects that I, one, didn't know how to perform, but two, they would not help train me at all. Like I would try to ask questions and they would be super dismissive and be like, no, it's fine, just ask me later. And then they'd be refusing to set up meetings when I wanted to like walk through my questions one by one. So I got really frustrated, but then, I had to realize that in the professional world, there are going to be people like that just have a lot on their plate. They don't have time to talk through things with you. And so that's when I kind of realized that you really need to start using all these resources that are at your disposal. So I started reaching out to other people on the team who have worked with this manager, and I set up meetings with these other people. It kind of helped me get a better understanding of what this manager's expectations are, how to use these platforms that the team uses. And at the end, I was able to successfully get trained on everything and perform the projects. But it was definitely very hard to just do first, because it was one of my first internships. And I think in an internship, you're often used to feeling inferior compared to everyone else. You think, oh, I just work for this person, I'm just an intern. But no, at the end of the day, you are a part of the team. You mean just as much as everyone else on the team. You deserve to get your questions answered. And if one person can't answer it, you should just move on to the next person.
I love that. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because even after 17 years in 2 separate industries, it's the same. You're going to run into people that their plates are too big and your work depends on them, right? So I've had several different challenges, from people to laws, rules, regulators, some BCP, disaster recovery fund stuff too. One of the ones that I was going to share was similar to yours, in that I had a manager that I didn't always get along with, and I couldn't determine if it was something like, am I bringing bias into it? Am I now just, is it all me? Some time away helped the situation. I was able to take vacation days, so that was part of it. But I also tried to look for other ways to connect with her and to try and get her time. She did have some habits in terms of like coffee and tea. So I would try and see if I could just go right there with my pointed question. And it was super difficult in the beginning because sometimes you don't know the question to ask. Like, I know I need to get here, but I don't even know where to start asking questions. You need someone to kind of give you that. So what I would take from it is just keep asking questions, keep trying, keep at it, just keep swimming. And absolutely remember that you are an integral part of that team. No matter what title you hold, you are there for a purpose, and it is important.
I would say that a lot of my, I guess, bad experiences just had everything to do with me being overwhelmed by the amount of things that were on my plate. Like, it was my first time being in a professional environment with such a huge team. And when I was given 2 different intern projects to work on, and in addition to the work I already had, I just felt so overwhelmed. There were days that I had to stay after work until 7 just to get something done by a deadline. And that, I think, was the most difficult thing for me. But it was a great learning experience because you kind of learn that it's temporary. It doesn't happen every day. And that also happens all the time when you go out into the professional world. It happens to me at times, and you just have to understand it's not it's not permanent. I hope for you to be working after hours, but as long as you're getting the work done, I think it's an overall learning experience for you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I feel like even in just the classroom setting, like there may be that professor that you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this class. The professor is acting like they hate me. Like, what am I supposed to do? I've definitely had my fair share of some professors. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I was able to just get the work done. Then I definitely agree with you, Maryalina, taking time away, like, especially when you have weekends to like kind of detox and take a break. I feel like that definitely helped me to like get my mind back on track. I mean, like, okay, I can try this to see if there's any way this can make this a little bit better. And usually that always helps. So I definitely agree with your tip with that. But yeah, like Quin said, hopefully it's not permanent. It's just temporary. I can say with classes, once you're done with it. You don't have to see them again. But yeah, I hope like in the professional world, it's not going to be permanent for you guys, but there's always a way to overcome something in this field. You just got to find what works for you, you know? But yeah, I definitely agree with all of your tips that you just gave with that question for sure. The next question I have is, what are technologies you had to use at one of your internships? This could be like program languages like Python or Java, or like systems like GitHub or VS Code are some examples.
My most recent internship utilized a lot of SQL and Tableau, which I knew the basics of SQL from comp sci, but like not as much knowledge as a big company would be utilizing. So most of the internship required a lot of me playing around with like Tableau and SQL statements in my free time, but luckily managers are usually pretty understanding when you say you're really new to something. So they'll always give you really great resources, like here's this data camp course. And something I didn't realize is that usually these companies have like a whole system full of courses and videos that you can watch and even get certified in. So definitely, if there is a technology or a programming language that you're not familiar with that you might need to utilize, definitely ask around because the company definitely has resources on it.
That's a really good point, Akshithaa, because LinkedIn Learning is another one that I've just become like my best friend. Those reminders are a bit annoying, but I do like some of the courses that they have, and you'll find a lot that are free. All right, so some of the ones that I've dealt with the most, Tableau, absolutely. I've been in my current position now a little over a year, and everything I was interviewing for asked me if I knew Tableau. So I knew what Tableau did, but I didn't know how to do it. So I started taking a course, so at least I could talk intelligently about it. I was still my authentic self saying, you know, this is what I do know and what I don't. C++, Python, JSON, any of the Atlassian products, if you're looking to go into the agile environment, so Jira and Confluence are two, those are tied very closely together. And again, if you're asked if you know these things, you'll know from the job description too. So you'll be researching that and you'll know what to look for and where to say that your strengths are. But I would say, yeah, those are some of the most common that I'm used to working with.
I honestly did not have to learn that much technology as a QA intern. A lot of it was like native to the applications that I was QAing for. So testing the UI. I think sometimes I use SQL a bit, and I was kind of now getting into automated testing when my internship ended. So didn't really get much into that, but we use a lot of Microsoft spreadsheets. Like that was huge. A lot of QA is spreadsheets, but I would say like the biggest technology I guess I learned was the business. If you don't understand the business for QA, then you really don't understand, like you're not going to do such a great job in testing. Like you need to know, oh, so in this state, we need this wording in the UI. So I need to know exactly what I should be looking for when I'm testing. And I guess that was the technology aspect for my QA internship.
If I need a QA, I'm going to come to you and ask. It's true. That role, definitely, you need to know the business side of it. TestRail, that's another one. I don't know if you've heard of that, Quin, but that's one that's new to me in this role, and it's automated testing. So I'm learning TestRail.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, I would have loved to know more about automated testing. Don't know much about it. Wish I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great. I love that. I swear I had an answer, not an answer. I had something to add on to, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, I think it was when Quin, when you were saying like understanding the business is very important. I don't know why, but I always try like make some connections back to like my concentration because that's just how my mind works. But like with data science, like we're always like hit with different models to use, and like it's kind of like getting thrown a ball with whatever data set you get. Like it could be a data set that's totally clean and it's easy to implement, or it could be a data set where you're like, what does any of this mean? So like that could be with the business. Like the business could be like, this is our objective, this is what we make, this is what we want to do. And there could be a business where like, we don't know what we're doing. We're kind of just doing something, but it's working. So I totally get that. Like doing that research first and like understanding it first before you tackle that data set, or doing the QA for that business. I definitely agree that that's definitely very important for sure. I feel like in any field in tech, that's very important for sure. But yeah, I totally agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like one of the best advice I've ever been given was learn the business, because without it, like if you are a software developer, why are you doing what you're doing if you don't understand the business? Like it's really hard to decipher that.
I think too, technology is always seen as a cost center, right? Like the business knows that they have to pay for us to be there to write their app, to protect their app, security, operations, like all of that, but we're a cost to them. So being able to speak that language between the two and explain to the business why it's important that this part exists, or that piece of technology is needed, or, you know, we really wanted to move to Splunk, and security was very against it because they couldn't figure out how to make sure that it was locked down enough so that we didn't share client data. Kept pushing for it, we eventually got it. But, you know, you have to sell why it's important, why you got to keep up with that technology. Those are great points, Quin.
Sorry about that. My Zoom was acting weird. I was trying to unmute myself. I was like, what's happening? But yeah, thank you guys so much for your points that you contributed to that question. Those were definitely really great takeaways from that. Now this is like the second to last question. So we have 2 questions left. And then after that, I'll open the floor for the audience to ask any questions that they may have. So the next question is, what are key technical practices you encourage first-time interns to practice? So examples could be reviewing past CS courses they may take in, like the notes that they got from those courses, or looking back at program assignments they did in class, or at other internships or jobs or something like that. But yeah, let me know what your technical practices usually were when it came to your internships.
I guess one of the main key technical practices was to just utilize whatever coding language I was learning. So if I was, like I said, last internship was SQL and I didn't know it, so just kind of practicing it in my free time, even during company hours, I would just pull up a training camp and boot camp and just work on it. But I will say, from a comp sci perspective, if you do want to go into software engineering, definitely review your data structures notes, because I definitely underestimated how much you need to know data structures for interviews. I wish I had paid more attention and kept better notes, but a lot of interviewers would ask me questions regarding data structures and I would always blank out. They'd be like, can she use an array or a list? And I'm like, I don't know, I don't remember. So definitely, if you're planning to go down the computer science path and continuing that, definitely brush up on data structures, algorithms. It will be very beneficial.
That's really good advice. I would be the one interviewing you that I wouldn't ask that question because I have no idea. I would want to know, do you know how to get there though? Do you know where to look it up? Like, do we know where Google is, or where would you go to find that, right? Some of my technical practices, I would say, LinkedIn for sure. Use those journeys, look at your previous notes, and then not so technical. I would set up, you know, time with your former classmates or people that are in this field that have agreed to be mentors, things like that. And just keep that going, your coffee chats, and some of it can be about work and technical pieces, and others will just come organically. But in the tech world, you know, computers only do what us humans tell them to do.
I would say that if you have any projects, make sure that you know exactly what was happening in them. Like, for instance, oh, I use this tool, and if they ask you, oh, so what is, I don't know, React, how do you use that? How did you use that in your project? You kind of have to know exactly what is in your project. Like, don't forget about that. And what Akshithaa said was data structures. Even in my QA internship, they were asking me data structures questions. And definitely be prepared for that. It is okay to say you don't know. That's okay. It shows that you're humble. You don't know everything, but also try to explain what you think it could be. And I think that's always helpful. So be prepared.
Yeah, I definitely want to follow up about like the data structures. I think for the interview I had for my internship that I'm actually doing over summer, it was one of those questions where he gave me like, okay, so here's like the scenario. How would you code for that? I was like, oh, and it was like on the spot. And I was like, oh gosh. But thankfully, like I did my review of like, okay, this is what this language is for, this is how you would code this and all that. So I was like, I was able to explain it. It was just like, it just kind of felt like a struck to me. I was like, oh gosh, okay. So yeah, I definitely think like, especially with data structures, it's really important to have some good notes with that. And I definitely want to follow up with what Maryalina said, like when it comes to like past people, like past students you worked with or mentors you've had that are like in that same realm, definitely keep up those coffee chats with them. And definitely like ask them for like their advice, or even if they even have notes that you can like review. Because I definitely understand after you're done with the class, you want to just throw those notes away, but like it's good to keep those to review over. So yeah, I definitely agree with that point for sure. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your questions on that. Well, answers with that. And then Akshithaa, yeah, data structures, it's, whew, yeah, it still haunts me too. But yeah, I totally get that. So the last question that I have is, at a lot of internships, they have interns split into teams. Can you describe what your first time experience working in a team at an internship was like? And I do want to say, I know there's some internships where you're like individual. So if you haven't experienced a team in an internship, what was like your experience in a team in CS, if that makes sense? So it's kind of like a subhead question.
Yeah, so in my first internship, that was like my very first intern team project because everything was so individual, like one-on-one with my manager, one-on-one with my department, that I had like very little intern interaction, especially since everything was remote. But I learned that like everyone comes from a different background. Like I was the only comp sci kid on my team, and everyone else was like business, finance, political science. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like you have such a wide range of majors and everyone specializes in something different. So the first initial meetings is really fun to just kind of learn what everyone is comfortable doing, what they're interested in doing. And then we kind of just started splitting up the work from there. Like, oh, you're really good at money and accounting. So how about you take over the budget stuff? And I'm really good at computer science. So how about I take over the technical stuff? So it's great. Interns are great at like kind of balancing out. And then you kind of just set up weekly meetings from there, just kind of monitoring the progress. The good thing with interns is that we're really good at communicating, especially on like social media. So we would always set up like group chats, group me, Instagram, DMs, Facebook messages. Like everyone was always super open and willing to help each other. But at the end of the day, it's cool because interns, everyone is so like-minded. Everyone is just as nervous and just as new to the environment as you. So it's a learning experience.
That's such good advice. Yeah. So I can talk about working in teams. Definitely, I've worked in teams where there is good cohesion, and then I've worked in teams where there's a lot of friction. So I'll tell you about a current one that I'm working with now. So I have two sides of the business. They have very different desires on where they want to go with things. And our job, my like team software development application, manages both of those. So I'm currently now going between the two and trying to figure out how I can best, like I need champions on both sides, right? That understand, because I know that the directors know what they need to do and they know what they need to accomplish, but we are the ones that are going to be doing the actual work. So getting on that level and being able to figure out how I can get those champions to see both sides. Some of the tools I've used before is, again, coffee chats. If you have you can't always do this, and probably not as an intern, but there are lots of free personality tests out there that I think sometimes are really helpful. In groups that I've been in, I'll say like, listen, I know we're all a group of 50-year-old people, but it's kind of fun, right? We take this, it helps me understand more about how best to communicate with that person. And if you ever have that type of opportunity in a team, that's something that you can work to introduce, and I guarantee it will help. And I'm sure through school, you guys have had to do stuff like that. I had to, black and white TV long ago. I'm teasing.
Yeah, I was really fortunate in my internship experience to have another intern that was working with me. So we always bounced ideas and questions off of each other. We literally spoke every single day. So it was good to have that communication, someone that understood what I was going through. And another thing with the internship as a whole, we had like a weekly internship meeting. We'd always go into breakout rooms and chat. And it was great because I met people from just different operations within the company. A lot of the interns I had were like a business majors or finance majors. I think we had a political science major, and I got to learn about their areas of operation that they were interning in. And that helped me to understand the company as a whole. And we also organized like, I think bi-weekly coffee chats, which was also really important because some of the interns I worked with did not have someone to bounce their ideas off of. They were just working by themselves, figuring things out alone, well, with their manager, but alone as an intern. So definitely network. I've met so many people during my internship, and I still talk to them to this day, like I said in the beginning. So it's really important to network within those groups.
Those are all great, great answers to that question. And I definitely want to follow up with what you said, Quin. Like networking is like so important, and like I learned that even like in data science. There is like one team project. I'm used to being the leader in a lot of the projects because like I'm always the one asking the question. Everyone's like, she asked the question, she'll be the leader. I was like, I was just asking a question, but okay. And like I don't mind because like I love, you know, being able to help people and like guide them with where they can go with something if they have an idea. But I definitely do think that having like that other person there that you can bounce ideas off of and like that's going through the same thing you're going through, I feel like that's so like refreshing because you don't feel alone in what you're doing. Because I honestly 4 years ago I probably been like the person doing everything alone, but now like I could never imagine that right now. I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope there's somebody else that's going through what I'm going through. Like, let's work together. Like, I love when it comes to working in teams and like we're all like on the same page. Like, that's so refreshing to me. But yeah, I definitely love that you brought up that point. But yeah, that was the last question that I had in regards to basically what we had listed here. So I did want to open up to the audience. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself too, whatever you're comfortable with. But I'll give a sec for you guys to have any questions or answer any questions. Cool, okay, so we have a question here from Rachel. Okay, so she said, thank you guys for such good answers to the questions. I would be unmuted, but unfortunately I'm in a bit of a noisy area. I totally get that, so it's totally fine. I'm not doing an internship yet, but was curious about the experience. I am, however, doing one of the work preps that was offered by GWC. Yay, that's great. I applied and got it and was curious on how I could best stand out to the company. Okay, so basically the question Rachel has is how can you basically stand out when it comes to a company? That's a great question, Rachel.
I think Quin mentioned this, but kind of talking about projects you've been involved with. I think that's a really good way to stand out. No project is ever too small, and every project contributes something. You've done something and you should be really proud to show that off. So I think a great way to stand out to companies is to talk about something you've done. And I guess one piece of advice is if you haven't done a project, start one. It's never too late. You can always find a random data set online or something that you're interested in and just make a project out of it with your skills. And that's a really great way to stand out.
I think that's fabulous. I don't think I have much more than that. I would just encourage you to be your true authentic self, because wherever you land, you want to be able to bring what you can to the table. So just be you. Oh, Quin, you're muted.
Oh, Quin.
Just realized that. I was saying congrats on your internship, Rachel. That's really exciting. one way I guess to stand out would be, I would say reaching out like to people on your team, make sure that they know who you are. And if there's another area of interest that you have, like for me, I was in QA, but I always wanted to do UX. I reached out to the UX manager and I was able to do one of my intern projects with her, and I learned so much. So what I would just say, like, that's the best way to stand out. Reach out, network, make sure that people know who you are and know that you have the knowledge about the company.
That's great advice too. Yeah, one more thing that I just thought of. So I have a friend, his name is Freddy Ferrari. He wanted to be in like movies. They live out in Hollywood in California now. And when I went to visit them, he was just introducing himself as Freddy. And I was like, but your name is so awesome. People will remember you as Freddy Ferrari. So I would encourage you to do what Quin said. Yeah, put yourself out there and make your name known.
Also, I love that name, Freddy Ferrari. That awesome, is right? Iconic. I love that. Heck, if I had that name. Yeah, if I had that name, I'm like, yep, my name is Freddy Ferrari. I want everyone to know. I literally love that.
Exactly.
That is so awesome. Rachel, is there any other questions you have, or was that it? I hope you found those answers helpful. Okay, cool. She has one last question. So she said, thank you guys. Only last question. What do you guys think is the best coding language to learn or the most commonly used in the field? Great question, Rachel. Thank you.
I guess it just kind of depends what path you want to go down. Now that I'm going down more of a data science path, the most commonly used is Python. But I know if you're kind of going to software engineering, software developer, you could be using anything from Java to SQL, anything. So yeah, I guess, Rachel, just kind of whatever position you're applying for, it's always great to just reach out to the recruiter or someone who's directly involved in that project or position you're interested in and kind of just asking like, hey, what kind of languages do you use? That's kind of something I try to do before I start an internship is reach out to my manager, maybe send out an email and be like, hey, is there any coding languages I should know for this internship? But there's just so many coding languages out there, and there's like newer ones coming out like every other day that companies utilize that you're never going to know all of them, and that's okay. Just take it step by step and just figure it out from there.
In my opinion, the good companies are going to give you company time to advance yourself in that new code, right? In that latest, in what you're interested in. Yes, I totally agree. Depends on which way you're going. Right now, my life is all about SQL and Java. Used to be a lot of Oracle. I no longer am in that world. So all those classes that I took are not quite as helpful anymore. But that's what I would say is concentrate on, you know, which direction you want to go, and the recruiter absolutely ask what they're into.
I would say that there's not necessarily a best coding language. I think I guess the best coding language is the one that you know the most. So a lot of the classes that you take in CS are in Java, and that's the language that I used when I was doing any coding assessments because I knew it the most. I had the most experience in it, and I could explain the syntax. But I think I would say, like, don't limit yourself to roles that speak on specific coding languages, because you can always learn the syntax just as long as you know, like, the foundation of coding that is the most important. Like, for instance, I had no experience in Kotlin, and that is the most like common coding language for Android developers. And I had the opportunity to learn it because I knew Java. It was a lot easier to translate that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I wanted to follow up on that. A common thing I always say to myself when like either there's a job I'm looking at and I see these languages, I'm like, I don't know any of these. I know one of them at least, is I always say to myself, I know this one language. How can that connect with this one? Like, I feel like even with Python and Java, I originally just knew Java and then I had to learn Python because of data science. you can see like similarities with the two. The syntax, of course, will be like entirely different, but the foundation, like how basically they call it the control flow, will still like be really the same. It's just the syntax, it looks kind of more funky, but literally like what you said, Quin, like the foundation is like the key thing. And I always say to myself, like, if I learn one language, I should be able to learn another. Like, it's not impossible. It's definitely very possible. But yeah, I hope you found that helpful, Rachel. Did you have any other questions? Oh yeah, they're super helpful. That's great to hear. Awesome. Cool. So I know we're running a bit on time, not too bad. Okay, so Rachel said, thank you guys. You all have been very helpful. No more questions. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Rachel, for those amazing questions. And I did want to say to the panelists, if you guys want to, for anyone that's watching this later on, if you guys have any contact information that we can like give to our members to follow up if they have any questions, to reach out to you, whether it's like LinkedIn or email, whatever is comfortable with you. You can put it in the chat right now for Rachel, and we'll like provide it with this recording as well, so people will be able to reach out to you guys. But yeah, cool. And
that's a great idea, Elise. Thank you so much for having us today.
Yes, of course. And yeah, I wanted to thank you guys again for taking time out of this lovely Friday to join in on this event. I definitely found a lot of y'all's advice so helpful, especially with going into this internship over the summer. I definitely do believe that our members as well will find this helpful, or I have found this helpful as well. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys like taking time out of your day to give us these amazing advice. And then I do want to say, for any members that are watching or present today, we do have last two events for this semester. We have our website launch. Thanks to our web development team, we express so much gratitude to you guys. We're actually having a party 5 to 6 p.m. on May 2nd. It'll be behind the Student Union. There'll be snacks. It'll be a great time for everyone to have a last hurrah before we go off into summer break. And then after that, we do have our end of year celebration. It'll actually be at Optimus Hall. If you're on the Discord, definitely stay posted on there. We do have some members that graciously will be able to provide carpooling for anyone. There's also a light rail as well if you live on campus. But yeah, on that note, thank you guys so much for coming to this event, and definitely feel free to contact Girls Who Code if you have any more questions. And if you are not a member, make sure to sign up on our Niner Engage. And yeah, that's pretty much a wrap on this. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.